The screaming stopped 3 hours ago in Havelock Secundus. That's when we knew they were all dead, or worse, that they'd stopped being dead. Listen, can you hear it? That low moan rising from the underhive? That's not the wind through broken ventilation shafts. That's hunger, endless, mindless hunger. Before I tell you what's making that sound, before I reveal the horror that the Imperium doesn't want you to know about, if you value your life, if you want to survive what's coming, you need to subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification icon, because the information I'm about to share could be the difference between you walking away from an outbreak or becoming part of it. The Administratum doesn't want this knowledge spreading. The Inquisition has silenced others for less, but you deserve to know the truth. I'm recording this because someone needs to understand what's coming for you, for all of us, when hope finally dies. They call it the Curse of Unbelief, and it's already here. Picture this. You're standing watch on the wall of your hive city. Dawn hasn't broken yet. The only light comes from the promethium torches guttering in the toxic wind. Movement catches your eye in the ash wastes below. At first you think it's a survivor from the convoy that disappeared last week. Then you see the way he walks, that distinctive shamble, the awkward, broken puppet gait of something that's forgotten how bodies are supposed to move. He gets closer, close enough that your lamp pack beam hits his face. Emperor preserve us. You recognize him. Dreads. A tide of shambling corpses, and somewhere in that mass of rotting flesh and reaching hands you spot more faces you know. Your sergeant, the medici who set your broken arm last month, the sweet old woman who ran the protein paste dispensary. All of them dead. All of them walking. All of them hungry. This is not a hypothetical scenario. This is Hive Tertius on Hydra Minoris 3 days before the planet went dark. This is Necromunda's underhive every other month. This is Vrax, where the siege lasted 17 years and the dead outnumbered the living 10 to 1. This is the reality of the 41st millennium's darkest plague. And it starts with a single, terrible truth. Despair is contagious, literally, deep in the Imperium, where thought becomes reality and emotion bleeds into existence. The Plague Lord sits upon his rotting throne and laughs. Nurgle, the chaos god of decay and disease, has always understood something fundamental about humanity. We are fragile, not just our bodies, our souls. The Curse of Unbelief didn't emerge from some laboratory accident or natural mutation. It was crafted, designed with malevolent purpose by Nurgle's greatest servants, fusing physical pathogen with warp-born curse into something that defies every law of biology and blasphemes against the very concept of death itself. But here's what makes this plague truly insidious. It's selective. You could be the strongest warrior in your regiment, muscles like corded steel, immune system enhanced by the finest medical treatments the Imperium can provide. None of it matters, because the Curse of Unbelief doesn't care about your body's defenses. It feeds on something else entirely. It feeds on the moment you give up, the instant you lose hope, that precise second when you stop believing tomorrow will come. In the Imperium, that describes billions upon billions of souls. Some whisper that this plague has existed longer than official records admit. Dark rumors circulate in the halls of the Inquisition, rumors that make even hardened agents hesitate before speaking. They say the technology of the Golden Throne itself, the miraculous machine that keeps the Emperor's corpse alive, shares disturbing similarities with the plague's reanimation process. Think about that. The Emperor, preserved in a state between life and death by warp-infused technology. Plague victims, preserved in a state between life and death by warp-infused disease. Could it be that 10,000 years ago someone tried to replicate the Emperor's miracle? That heretical tech priests of the Dark Mechanicum attempted to master death itself, and instead birthed this abomination? The Thorian faction of the Inquisition certainly thinks so. They've noted the parallels. Both processes use immaterial energy to sustain dead or dying tissue. Both defy natural law. Both require a constant influx of warp power to function. The difference? The Emperor's preservation serves humanity. The plague serves only Nurgle. But the most terrifying question remains unanswered. If the curse is truly a failed attempt to recreate the Golden Throne's miracle, what does that say about the stability of the Emperor's own condition? This is forbidden speculation, of course, the kind that gets entire archive wings purged. But once you see the connection, you cannot unsee it. Let me walk you through what happens when the curse takes hold, because if you ever see these signs in someone you love, you need to act fast. Or better yet, you need to run. It starts so innocently. A slight fever, dizziness, nothing alarming. You felt worse after a double shift in the manufactorum. Your skin takes on a pallid, grayish tint. But in the polluted air of a hive city, everyone looks half dead anyway. You don't know it yet, but you're already dangerous. Every drop of your sweat, every trace of saliva carries the infection. You brush against someone in a crowded transit tunnel. You share a drink with a friend. You kiss your spouse goodnight. You've just condemned them all. This is the plague's cruelest trick. The infected are contagious long before they know they're dying. By the time symptoms become obvious, dozens more are already marked for death. Within days, your skin begins to tighten like leather left in the sun. Veins bulge black beneath the surface, mapping your body in dark rivers. Your hair comes out in clumps when you run your fingers through it. Green-black scabs erupt across your flesh, weeping a fluid that smells of rot and something else. Something wrong. The hunger starts here, not for food. Your stomach rebels at the thought of eating. No, this is different. This is a craving that has no name in human language. A need that your corrupted instincts are only beginning to understand. Your mind fractures. Memories slip away like water through your fingers. You have moments of clarity, brief, horrifying seconds where you understand what's happening to you. And then the fog rolls back in, thick and suffocating. In these lucid moments, some victims try to warn others. They stumble to the medici stations, begging to be restrained, to be killed, anything to stop what's coming. Most are turned away. The medici workers don't understand. Not yet. By the time they do, it's too late. Look at yourself in the mirror now. If you can still recognize what you see. Your cheeks have sunken into your skull. Your eyes have gone milky white or yellow with jaundice. Your lips have peeled back from your teeth in a permanent death grimace. Large sections of your skin have simply fallen off, revealing the suppurating flesh beneath. You are rotting, while still alive. The pain should be unbearable, but you barely feel it anymore. Your nerves are dying along with everything else. What you do feel overwhelmingly is hunger. It consumes every thought, every instinct. You see movement and your body responds before your fragmenting mind can process it. The people around you, family, friends, strangers, they all look the same now. They all look like meat. You're not you anymore. Not really. You're a passenger in a body that's become a prison, watching through failing eyes as your hands reach for throats, as your teeth snap at flesh. Some part of you buried deep is screaming, but the hunger is louder. Then comes the moment medical doctrine says is impossible. You die, your heart stops. Your lungs deflate. Your brain shuts down. Synapses firing their last desperate signals before going dark forever. Death should be the end of it. It isn't. Something stirs in the meat that used to be you. Not life, not exactly. The warp bleeds through the thin places your despair has created, and suddenly there's motion again. Purpose. Hunger. Your corpse stands up. What shambles forward now is not human. It's a puppet with cut strings still somehow walking, a violation of every natural law. The physical body is dead, no pulse, no breath, no brain activity, yet it moves with terrible purpose. The virus and the warp curse have merged completely, transforming your cadaver into something that shouldn't exist. You are a plague zombie now, and you have only one function left: to feed, to kill, to spread the infection to every living thing you can reach. Your body is falling apart with every step. Skin sloughs off in wet chunks. Fingers break and hang at wrong angles. Your jaw might dislocate from the force of your own biting. You leak black ichor from wounds that don't bleed properly because your blood no longer flows. But you don't stop. You can't stop. Pain means nothing. Fear means nothing. A lasbolt to the chest? You'll barely notice. Lose an arm? You'll keep coming with the other one. Only complete destruction of the brain or total bodily annihilation will end your shambling nightmare existence. And here's the worst part. You're not alone. The curse has a way of drawing the dead together. Packs of plague zombies gather, moving in hordes, hundreds or thousands strong, sweeping through hab blocks like a tide of rotting flesh. 1 becomes 10. 10 becomes 100. 100 becomes an unstoppable wave that drowns entire cities in the dead. This is how worlds fall. The Imperium wants you to believe the curse is a recent horror, something that emerged from the 41st millennium's endless wars. They're lying. This plague is old, ancient, It may have been stalking humanity since the very dawn of the Imperium itself. Cast your mind back to the Great Crusade, that glorious age when the Emperor walked among men and his sons. The Primarchs conquered the galaxy in his name. It was a time of hope, of unity, of humanity reclaiming its birthright among the stars. But even then, in that golden age, the darkness was waiting. The Luna Wolves, later to become the traitor sons of Horus, descended on Davin's moon expecting a simple compliance action. Primitive tribes, Stone Age weapons. It should have been over in hours. Instead, they found hell. The Astartes advanced through the swamps, their transhuman senses alert for ambush. What they encountered defied all tactical doctrine. The enemy didn't fall when shot. Warriors with las burns through their hearts kept charging. Corpses in the mud suddenly lurched upright and grabbed at ankles. One Luna Wolf, Brother Sergeant Goshen, later recorded in his personal log. I put 3 bolter rounds through one of their warriors. Center mass. I watched him go down. Then as I moved past his position, he grabbed my leg. His chest was gone. I could see through him. But his hands, Emperor's mercy, his hands were strong. The Space Marines, among humanity's finest warriors, found themselves in desperate close combat. Chainswords roared. Flamers turned the fog orange with burning promethium. And slowly, terribly, the Luna Wolves realized the truth. Their enemies were already dead. It was during this nightmare that the now famous exchange occurred between 2 battle brothers. Throne. Don't they ever stop? I must have killed 100 of the damned things. You probably keep killing the same one. If you don't destroy the head, they get back up again. A lesson learned in blood and horror. One that would be relearned countless times across the millennia to come. The Luna Wolves eventually burned every square meter of that cursed moon. But the damage was done. Seeds of corruption had been planted, and within months War Master Horus himself would return to Davin and be struck down by a poisoned blade, beginning his fall to chaos. Coincidence? The Inquisition doesn't believe in coincidence. The Forgotten Warnings. After Davin, there were others, isolated incidents scattered across 10,000 years of history. A mining colony that went silent, its entire population found alive but not breathing. A pilgrim ship discovered drifting through the warp, its crew feeding on each other despite all being clinically dead for weeks. These stories were dismissed, buried, labeled as Xenos activity or warp phenomena or mass hysteria. Anything but what they actually were, warnings. The curse was already spreading, even then, slowly, patiently, waiting for the right moment, the right conditions, to truly flourish. That moment came in the 41st millennium, when faith began to crumble under the weight of endless war, and the Imperium's grip on hope finally started to slip. If you want to understand what the Curse of Unbelief can do, what it can take from us, you need to hear what happened to Hydra Minoris. 23 billion souls, 23 billion Imperial citizens going about their lives, working in the factories, praying in the temples, raising their children in the hope of a better tomorrow. All of them dead in less than a month. Typhus. Even speaking his name feels like inviting corruption. Herald of Nurgle, host of the Destroyer Hive, Lord of the Plague Fleet. He is death incarnate, a chaos space marine so steeped in disease that his very presence causes flowers to wilt and steel to rust. And he chose Hydra Minoris as his canvas. How he breached the planet's defenses remains classified. Some say he infiltrated during a routine inspection, his corrupt form hidden by sorcery. Others claim a cult within the Hive had been preparing for his arrival for years, weakening security from within. What matters is that he reached the primary Hive city's atmospheric processors. And there, with ceremony and unholy prayer, he released the plague. Day 1 to 3. Medici centers report unusual patients, grayskin, confusion, aggressive behavior, isolated cases. Nothing to panic about. Standard disease control protocols are initiated. Day 4-5, cases multiply exponentially. Entire hab blocks go dark. Enforcers sent to investigate don't report back. When backup teams arrive, they find the enforcers' bodies torn apart. And the things doing the tearing look like the people who should be victims. Day 6 and 7. The planetary governor finally understands what's happening, but by then it's already over. The Underhive goes first. Those cramped, desperate levels where hope died long ago. The curse spreads like wildfire through the lower classes. The downtrodden, the forgotten, the ones who'd already given up. Millions turn in days. The zombie hordes swarm upward through the hive layers, an unstoppable tide of rotting flesh. Defense forces try to hold them back. Last guns fire until their power packs are depleted. Flamers turn entire corridors into infernos. It's not enough. It's never enough. One Vox transmission from this period has become infamous. A PDF sergeant broadcasting from a makeshift barricade. Command, this is Sigma 7. We need extraction. We need it now. They're not stopping. We've killed them, and they keep coming. My men are... Emperor's mercy, they're eating Corporal Hendricks. He's been dead for an hour.
How is he eating Hendricks?
The transmission ends with screaming. By now, word has reached Segmentum Command. A full inquisitorial team arrives in the system, takes one look at the situation, and makes the decision that will haunt the sector for generations. Total quarantine. Every ship in the system is ordered to form a blockade. Nothing enters. Nothing leaves. The message is broadcast on all frequencies. Hydra Minoris is under exterminatus protocols. Any vessel attempting to breach quarantine will be destroyed without warning. Any escape pod, any shuttle, anything, the Emperor protects, but sometimes protection requires sacrifice. Down on the surface, billions of still living citizens hear this message. They understand what it means. They've been abandoned. The planetary VoxNet stays active for another week. Scattered survivors broadcast their final messages. Some pray, some scream. Some simply describe what they're seeing as if bearing witness matters in the end. The planetary governor's last transmission is the most haunting. To whoever finds this, we tried. We tried to contain it. But the plague, it's not just a disease. It's divine punishment. Punishment for our lack of faith, our despair, our sins. The Emperor has turned his face from us, and in his absence, other powers have claimed us. Forgive us, forgive. The sounds that follow are wet. Organic, the tearing of meat, the crack of bones, then silence. Hydra Minoris still orbits its star, a dead world of empty cities and wandering corpses. The quarantine remains in effect. Automated defense satellites orbit the planet, programmed to destroy anything that tries to leave. 23 billion people. An entire world's worth of hopes, dreams, families, futures, gone in a month. The Administratum has already assigned the planet a new designation, Hydra Minoris Perditus. The Lost. Eventually, centuries from now, someone might decide to resettle it. They'll send in Astartes purge teams first, to burn every last plague zombie to ash. They'll scour the surface with rad cleansing and blessed promethium. Maybe then it will be safe. But the people of Hydra Minoris will still be dead, and their ghosts will walk those empty streets forever. A reminder of what happens when the Imperium decides that your lives aren't worth the risk of saving you. This is the calculus of the 41st millennium. This is the price of survival in a galaxy gone mad. And Hydra Minoris was just one world. There have been others. There will be more. Not all outbreaks happen on the grand stage of planetary annihilation. Sometimes the curse festers in the forgotten places, the deep darks where hope never existed in the first place. Welcome to Necromunda. Imagine a planet where the entire surface is covered in city. Not towns or metropolises, but hive cities. Structures so massive they pierce the clouds, so deep they burrow miles into the planet's crust. Billions upon billions of souls stacked on top of each other in a vertical civilization where your place in the tower literally determines your worth. At the top, the spire, gleaming. Towers where the nobility live in luxury, where the air is clean and sunlight actually reaches. At the bottom, the underhive. A lightless hell of toxic sludge, collapsed structures, and forgotten people. A place where gangs rule through violence, where mutants breed in the darkness, and where hope is a commodity more rare than water. The curse loves the underhive. Necromunda has been continuously inhabited for thousands of years. Hive cities are built on top of older cities, which are built on top of ancient ruins going down layer after layer into geologic time. Sometimes deep in those forgotten levels, work crews breaking through into a sealed chamber find surprises. In one documented case, gangers from House Goliath breached a wall in the sludge wastes, looking for archaeotech to sell. What they found was a chamber that hadn't been opened in centuries. Inside, corpses, hundreds of them, perfectly preserved in the toxic atmosphere. Then the corpses started moving. The gangers ran, but the plague followed. Within a week, an entire settlement dome was infected. House Goliath responded with their typical subtlety. They collapsed the tunnels leading out, sealing thousands of people inside to die. Better that than let the infection spread. This has happened repeatedly throughout Necromunda's history. The Underhive is riddled with sealed plague zones, entire sections of the city rendered permanently off-limits. The people who live down there know, if you see a tunnel mouth welded shut and marked with the sign of quarantine, you don't ask questions. You just stay away. Of course, there's always some fool who thinks the stories are exaggerated. Some gang desperate enough to risk it for the potential loot. They break the seals. They go inside, they never come back out. At least not as themselves. But the most terrifying story to emerge from Necromunda's plague-haunted depths is that of Carlo Valois. Carlo was nobody. A nothing. A scummer born in the absolute lowest levels of the Underhive, where even the bottom feeders look down on you. His only distinguishing feature was a latent psychic talent he didn't understand and couldn't control. The whispers in his head drove him half-mad, sending him wandering deeper and deeper into the toxic wastes. That's where they found him. Or where he found them. A pack of plague zombies, remnants of some ancient outbreak prowling the sump tunnels. They fell on Carlo like starving rats, tearing into his flesh, pumping him full of the curse. He should have died. He should have risen as just another mindless corpse. Instead, something incredible happened. In that moment between life and death, with the infection flooding his system and his untrained psychic powers exploding in a desperate survival reflex, Carlo Valois did the impossible. He took control. His psyker abilities, normally weak and unfocused, latched onto the simple, hungry minds of the plague zombies, and he bent them to his will. The zombies stopped attacking. They stood there swaying, waiting. For the first time in recorded history, someone had mastered the curse rather than being mastered by it. Carlo pulled himself up, half dead, infected, transformed. The plague was still in him. He could feel his body starting to change, could feel the hunger rising. But his mind remained. His will remained, and he had an army. Over months, Carlo's power grew. He discovered he could sustain himself by draining life energy from the living, a vampiric gift born of his half-undead state. He gathered more plague zombies under his control, building a horde that numbered in the hundreds. Then he began using them. At first, it was simple survival. Carlo would send his zombies to raid settlements for supplies. Later, it became extortion. He'd approach Underhive communities with an offer, give him what he wanted, or face his plague horde. Most paid. Those who didn't, well, their settlements became recruiting grounds for more zombies. Carlo Valois became a legend in the Underhive, a boogeyman. Mothers would warn their children, behave, or Carlo and his dead men will come for you in the night. But legends attract attention. The redemption came for him with the fury of fanatics. These red-robed zealots, obsessed with purifying the Underhive of mutants, witches, and corruption, saw Carlo as an abomination that demanded cleansing. They gathered an army of their own, hundreds of believers armed with flamers, chainswords, and unshakable faith. The battle at the abyss is still spoken of in hushed tones in Necromunda's depths. Picture it, a chasm so deep its bottom has never been seen. Bridges spanning the gap, ancient and crumbling, and on those bridges a war between the living and the dead. Carlo's plague horde shambled forward in waves, hundreds of rotting corpses, moving as one under his psychic control. The Redemptionists met them with walls of fire, chanting prayers as they burned the undead by the dozens. The Emperor's light cleanses all corruption. Faith is our shield. Flame is our sword. The zombies didn't fear, didn't hesitate. They threw themselves at the zealots in mindless waves, dragging down anyone who got too close. The Redemptionists burned and burned until the air was thick with the stench of cooking meat, and the screams of both sides filled the darkness. Carlo himself joined the battle, using his vampiric powers to drain the life from anyone who got too close. Redemptionists aged years in seconds, their skin withering as he fed, but there were too many. Too many flamers, too much faith. His forces crumbled. His zombies fell and didn't rise again. And finally, with his back to the abyss and nowhere left to run, Carlo Valois made his choice. "The Emperor may judge you," he shouted at the approaching zealots, "but I'll see you in hell first." He threw himself backward into the abyss. The darkness swallowed him. The Redemptionists celebrated. Another witch purged. Another horror cleansed. But here's the thing about the Underhive. Bodies don't always stay dead down there. Especially bodies as unique as Carlo Valois. No corpse was ever recovered, and sometimes in the deepest, darkest tunnels, gangers report seeing a figure in the shadows. A man who shouldn't be alive. Surrounded by shambling dead, watching, waiting. Carlo's legend hasn't ended. It's just sleeping. Weaponized death. The story of Carlo Valois proves something terrifying. The plague can be controlled. Not by everyone. Not easily, but it can be done. Some in the Underhive have taken this lesson to heart. Enterprising tech gangers have experimented with crude explosive collars attached to captured plague zombies. Wind them up, point them at an enemy gang's territory, and detonate instant chaos. The explosion kills the zombie, sure, but it also spreads infected gore everywhere. And if any of that gore gets into a wound, it's a weapon that can backfire catastrophically. The zombies don't care who they infect once the collar comes off. Many a gang war has ended with both sides fleeing from the undead tide they accidentally unleashed. But in the Underhive, where life is cheap and morality is cheaper, the plague is just another tool. Another way to survive in the darkness. If Hydra Minoris shows us what the plague can do to a civilian population, and Necromunda shows us how it festers in forgotten places, then Vrax demonstrates its ultimate military application, because on Vrax, the curse became a weapon of mass destruction. Vrax was an armory world, a planet dedicated to manufacturing and storing weapons for the Imperial Guard. Mountains of ammunition. Warehouses full of tanks. Enough firepower to equip a dozen crusades. Then it fell to chaos. The details of how it happened don't matter for our purposes. What matters is that the Imperium couldn't let it stand. An entire planet's worth of military hardware in traitor hands? Unacceptable. Thus began the Siege of Vrax. 17 years of grinding, brutal trench warfare. Millions of Imperial Guardsmen fed into a meat grinder, throwing themselves at fortified positions defended by traitors and chaos forces. Bodies piled up, literally. The no-man's land between the trenches became a landscape of corpses. The dead lay in shell craters draped over barbed wire, stacked in abandoned foxholes. And in the third year of the siege, the Apostles of Contagion arrived, Necrosius and his gift. The Apostles of Contagion are Chaos Space Marines devoted to Nurgle. Their leader, a sorcerer named Necrosius, looked at Vrax and saw opportunity. All those corpses, all that death, all that despair in the trenches, perfect conditions for a plague. Under cover of darkness and toxic fog, Necrosius and his plague marines infiltrated the battlefield. They moved through no man's land, stepping over and sometimes through the piled dead. And wherever they walked, they performed dark rituals. They infected the corpses. Some reports say they use corrupted frag grenades filled with plague spores. Others speak of dark prayers that caused the very soil to turn infectious. Either way, the result was the same. The dead of Vrax began to rise. Imagine you're a guardsman manning your trench in the pre-dawn darkness. You've been on watch for 8 hours. You're exhausted, cold, hungry. Your buddy died yesterday. His body is still out there in no man's land because retrieval teams can't reach it under sniper fire. Then you hear it, a moan. Low, wet, coming from everywhere and nowhere. You peer over the trench edge and your lamp-pack beam catches movement. The corpses are stirring. The men you saw die hours or days ago are pulling themselves up out of the mud. Your buddy, the one who died yesterday, is standing up. His face is gray. His intestines are hanging out from the artillery wound that killed him. He's looking at you, and he's hungry. This scene played out across miles of front line simultaneously. Thousands of plague zombies rose from the battlefield, and they didn't care which side they attacked. Chaos traitors and Imperial Guardsmen alike found themselves fighting for their lives against enemies that should have been safely dead. The Apostles of Contagion had turned Vrax into the ultimate nightmare, a battlefield where the dead outnumbered the living, and every casualty could potentially rise again to continue fighting. The Imperial forces had to learn fast or be overwhelmed. Orders went out. Destroy the brain. Sever the head. burn everything. Flamer teams became the most valuable units on the line. Snipers retrained to exclusively take headshots. Combat doctrine was rewritten on the fly. New protocol. After any engagement, immediately secure and burn all corpses, friendly and enemy. Guardsmen found themselves with the grim duty of dragging their dead brothers to burn pits and lighting them aflame while the body was still warm. It was psychologically devastating. But it worked. The plague's advance slowed. The zombies, while terrifying, were ultimately mindless and could be destroyed with enough firepower and discipline. But the damage was done. The curse had broken Imperial morale, cost thousands of additional lives, and proved to chaos forces everywhere that the plague could be weaponized effectively on a large scale. Vrax would eventually fall. The siege would end. But the lessons learned there would echo through Imperial doctrine for centuries. After Vrax, every Imperial Guard regiment operating in potential Nurgle-influenced war zones receives special training. They drill on zombie response protocols. They maintain larger stockpiles of promethium for flamers. Medical officers carry protocols for identifying and euthanizing infected troops before they turn. It's grim. It's necessary. It's the reality of warfare in the 41st millennium, and it's still not enough, because the curse keeps evolving. Everything we've discussed, Hydra, Minoris, Necromunda, Vrax, these were preludes. Terrible in their own right, but limited in scope. Then came the 13th Black Crusade, and the galaxy itself began to die. Abaddon the Despoiler, War Master of Chaos, launched his largest invasion of the Imperium since the Horus Heresy. 13 previous Black Crusades had struck at the Imperium over 10,000 years. Each was beaten back. Each failed to truly break through. The 13th would be different. As Abaddon's armada poured out of the Eye of Terror, targeting Cadia and dozens of surrounding systems, his allies in the warp moved in concert. The Chaos Gods unleashed their full arsenals, and Nurgle unleashed the plague. Typhus rides again. If there's one name that recurs throughout the history of the Curse of Unbelief, it's Typhus, Herald of Nurgle, host of the Destroyer Hive, the Walking Plague. While Abaddon led the main assault, Typhus commanded the plague fleets, armadas of corrupted vessels carrying the worst diseases Nurgle could craft. They struck at worlds behind Imperial lines, spreading chaos and infection. The curse was his favorite weapon. Planet after planet reported outbreaks. Sometimes it started with a single infected refugee fleeing the fighting. Other times, chaos cultists released plague bombs in crowded hive cities. In the worst cases, Typhus himself descended to a world's surface and personally broke open ancient caskets of concentrated plague. Imperial forces found themselves fighting a war on two fronts: chaos armies from without and plague zombies from within. One of Typhus's most horrific acts was the desecration of Annunciation, a shrine world sacred to the Imperial Creed. Annunciation was a planet of pilgrims and prayer. Billions came every year to visit its grand cathedrals and venerate the relics of saints. It should have been protected by faith itself, but faith couldn't stop Typhus. His forces descended on the planet and systematically corrupted every holy site. He performed dark rituals in the basilicas, desecrating altars with the blood of priests. And he released the curse. When Imperial relief forces arrived weeks later, they found a nightmare. The pilgrims had all turned. Millions of plague zombies shuffled through the cathedral halls, still clutching their prayer books, still dressed in their devotional robes. They gathered in the basilicas as if for worship, moaning hymns in voices that no longer worked properly. The grand altar of the primary cathedral was a mountain of corpses, all kneeling in mock prayer, their rotting hands clasped together as if still beseeching the emperor for deliverance that never came. It was obscene, a mockery. The faithful transformed into monsters, their devotion twisted into undead parody. The cleansing teams burned for weeks. They used so much promethium that the cathedral stones cracked from the heat, and still they couldn't be sure they'd gotten every last zombie. Annunciation was declared perdita, lost forever. Its name struck from star charts. Its existence denied. Better that than admit what chaos had done to one of the Imperium's holiest worlds. At the heart of the 13th Black Crusade was Cadia, the fortress world that had guarded the Eye of Terror for 10,000 years. If Cadia fell, the floodgates would open. The plague came to Cadia too. Propaganda posters appeared on every wall. Attention citizens, burn all corpses within 6 minutes of death. The authorities knew Typhus was out there. They knew what he could do. The Cadians, grim and disciplined, followed protocols. Burn pits blazed day and night. Suspected infected were shot without hesitation. The plague never got a true foothold. But it didn't matter. Cadia would fall anyway. Not to the plague, but to overwhelming force. Abaddon threw everything at the planet. When even that wasn't enough, he dropped a blackstone fortress on it. The planet literally broke apart. Cadia fell, and with it, the last great barrier against chaos. The destruction of Cadia triggered a catastrophe beyond imagining. A massive warp storm erupted across the galaxy. A wound in reality so vast it split the Imperium in two. They call it the Cicatrix Maledictum, the Great Rift, the mouth of chaos. With its opening, the laws of reality themselves weakened. Warp energy flooded into real space. Demons manifested spontaneously. And the Curse of Unbelief spread like never before. Suddenly, worlds that had never heard of the plague found themselves fighting it. Outbreaks appeared simultaneously across dozens of sectors. In some cases, there was no obvious source, no carrier, no infected corpse, nothing. The theory among certain inquisitors is chilling. With the Great Rift's opening, the barrier between emotion and physical reality has thinned so catastrophically that extreme hopelessness itself can now manifest the curse. You don't need to be bitten anymore. You don't need contact with infected fluids. You just need to stop believing. Complete, utter despair, the kind that says there is no tomorrow, the Emperor has abandoned us, all hope is lost, can now apparently trigger the infection spontaneously. The warp bleeds through your moment of absolute hopelessness and the curse takes root. If true, it means the plague has evolved beyond disease. It's become a psychic phenomenon, a warp curse that can strike anyone anywhere at any time their faith falters. The galaxy has become a hunting ground, and the prey is anyone who dares to lose hope. Some have reported even stranger infection vectors in the post-Rift era. Fox broadcasts carrying a psychic contagion that induces despair in listeners, leaving entire hab blocks vulnerable. Nightmares so intense they physically manifest the curse. Even looking upon certain warp touch symbols or hearing specific frequencies can apparently weaken one's spiritual defenses enough for the plague to take hold. The curse has mutated, adapted, become something far worse than it was before. And, into this new nightmare era, a new breed of undead has emerged. As if standard plague zombies weren't horrifying enough, the post-Great Rift era has birthed something worse. Poxwalkers. A traditional plague zombie is a reanimated corpse, dead flesh puppeted by warp energy and viral curse. Horrible, yes, but ultimately just a mobile cadaver slowly falling apart. Poxwalkers are something more, something actively becoming. They start the same way, infection, death, reanimation. But then they keep changing. The warp energy doesn't just preserve them, it transforms them. Actively, aggressively, continuously. Watch a poxwalker for long enough and you'll see it happen in real time. Horns burst through skulls, splitting bone and skin with wet cracking sounds. Extra eyes open across their bodies, weeping pus and blood as they blink independently. Tentacles sprout from torsos, writhing with apparent purpose. Bone spikes punch through flesh from the inside, creating natural weapons. Their limbs elongate and twist into shapes that mock human anatomy. They're not just undead anymore. They're transforming into something demonic. The walking pox, the infection that creates poxwalkers, is called the walking pox by those who've studied it. Some inquisitors believe it's a hybridization of Nurgles, the demon plague that normally transforms victims into plague-bearer demons, and the original Curse of Unbelief. The result is something that occupies a horrifying middle ground between undead and demon, a corpse that's slowly becoming a warp entity but trapped in the material realm, forever caught in the transition. Some inquisitorial savants speculate that if a poxwalker lived long enough, it might complete the transformation entirely and become a true demon of Nurgle. But most are destroyed long before that can happen, or at least we hope they are. Poxwalkers aren't just cosmetically different from regular plague zombies. They're functionally superior in every terrifying way. They're faster, much faster. Where a plague zombie shambles with the awkward gait of a corpse, poxwalkers can run. Some even sprint, their mutated legs carrying them forward with unnatural speed, driven by an eagerness to spread Nurgle's gifts. They're stronger too. Warp-enhanced muscles, bulging with tumorous growths and unnatural vigor, can tear through flak armor like paper. A poxwalker's grip is iron. Its blows can shatter bone. Worst of all, some retain fragments of intelligence. Not much. They're still mostly driven by hunger and the compulsion to spread infection. But enough to be tactical. They can open doors, operate simple mechanisms, work together to overcome obstacles, set rudimentary ambushes, and they giggle. That's what survivors report most often, what haunts their nightmares. The sound of wet, burbling laughter coming from rotting throats as poxwalkers tear into their victims, as if they're enjoying it. As if Nurgle's blessing has filled them with such twisted joy that even undeath, even mutation, even the loss of their humanity is a gift worth celebrating. They laugh while they kill you. They laugh while they transform. They laugh as their bodies warp into nightmare shapes. The sound is enough to break even veteran soldiers. Poxwalkers are most commonly seen accompanying Death Guard Chaos Space Marines during Nurgle's campaigns in the current era. The traitor Astartes use them as expendable shock troops, driving them forward in waves to overwhelm enemy positions before the actual Space Marines engage. Imagine facing them. You're dug in behind fortifications ready for the enemy assault. Artillery support is on standby. You've got good firing lanes, plenty of ammunition. You're as prepared as you can be. Then you see them coming over the horizon. Hundreds of them. Thousands. A tide of mutated flesh giggling and moaning and reaching with hands that have too many fingers, or claws, or tentacles where fingers used to be. You open fire. Las bolts punch through torsos. Limbs are blown off. Some go down finally destroyed, but many, too many, keep coming despite wounds that should be fatal. Because they're already dead and they're mutated. Warp-touched bodies just don't care about conventional damage. They hit your line like a living tsunami. Hands grab, teeth bite, tentacles coil around throats, bone spikes impale. And worst of all, their touch carries the walking pox. One scratch, one bite, one spray of infected blood in your eyes or mouth. You're doomed. Within hours, you'll start feeling sick. Within a day, the mutations begin. Within days, you'll be shambling alongside them. Your body warping and changing. Your mind drowning in Nurgle's gifts, giggling at the wonderful blessing you've received. The new nightmare poxwalkers represent the next stage of the curse's evolution. They're not just plague zombies anymore. They're transitional beings halfway between undead and demon, and they're more dangerous than anything that came before. The Imperium's old protocols, headshots, flamers, burn the bodies, still work. But they're less effective. Poxwalkers are hardier. Their warp-infused flesh more resistant to damage. And they're appearing in places where the old plague never reached, spreading through regions that thought themselves safe. Reports come in daily of new outbreaks. A mining colony on the eastern fringe, a shrine world in Ultima Segmentum, a Navy battleship that emerged from the warp with its entire crew transformed into giggling monstrosities. The galaxy is learning to fear them. And fear, of course, only makes the problem worse. Because fear leads to despair, and despair leads to infection. It's a cycle with no end, a spiral into darkness that feeds itself. And the worst part? We're only seeing the beginning. The Great Rift has been open for barely a century. If the curse continues to evolve at this rate, what will it become in another 100 years? Another 1,000? What nightmares are yet to come? So how do you fight a plague that feeds on hopelessness in a galaxy where hope is the rarest resource of all? The Imperium has developed strategies, some effective, some desperate. All of them brutal. While most people have heard of the major ordos of the Inquisition, the Hereticus hunting witches, the Xenos hunting aliens, the Malleus hunting demons, few know about the minor branches. The Ordo Sepulchrum is one of them. Founded specifically to deal with chaos undead outbreaks, these inquisitors are nicknamed corpse hunters and plague doctors by their peers. It's not a glamorous posting. There are no grand battles against demon princes or dramatic showdowns with alien warlords. Just endless grinding work in plague zones, investigating outbreaks, tracing infection vectors, studying symptoms, burning bodies. So many bodies. Members of the Ordo Sepulchrum wade through nightmares on a daily basis. They examine rotting corpses looking for clues about new strains. They interrogate survivors about what they saw, what they felt, searching for patterns. They coordinate quarantines and cleansing operations. And sometimes, they make the ultimate sacrifice for knowledge. Inquisitor. Covenant is famous, or perhaps infamous, for a particular act of sacrifice during an outbreak investigation on a hive world. The outbreak was spreading faster than predicted. People were turning in hours instead of days. The Inquisitor needed to understand why, needed data on this new strain's progression, so he made a choice that still haunts his former acolytes. He deliberately allowed a plague zombie to bite him. Then he sealed himself in an isolation chamber, while his team watched through armored glass, recording everything. For 3 days, Inquisitor Covenant dictated observations as the infection progressed through its stages. He described every symptom in clinical detail, every sensation, every change in his perception and mental state. He noted the exact timing of each stage transition. As his mind began to slip as the hunger rose and his thoughts fragmented, he forced himself to continue. His final observations spoken through cracked, bleeding lips as gray skin spread across his face. The hunger. It's not physical. It's spiritual. A void where hope used to be. The curse doesn't just kill the body, it devours the soul's capacity for... A long pause. His eyes had begun to cloud. Faith. It devours faith. That's the vector. Another pause. When he spoke again, his voice was different, flatter. The person behind the eyes was fading. The Emperor protects. Even in death, I serve. Those were the last coherent words of Inquisitor Covenant. Moments later, the curse completed its work. His body died. And then it rose again, a shambling thing that threw itself at the armored glass, moaning with hunger for the living flesh on the other side. His acolytes activated the chamber's incinerators. The Inquisitor's sacrifice provided invaluable data on infection timelines, symptom progression, and the spiritual component of the curse. His observations have been codified into Ordo Sepulchrum doctrine and have saved countless lives since. But he paid for that knowledge with his soul. This is the cost of fighting the curse. This is what the Imperium demands of its defenders, not just their lives but their very humanity, sacrificed on the altar of survival. The Imperium has discovered something interesting, something that offers a glimmer of hope in the darkness. The curse cannot easily infect those with strong faith and hope. It preys on despair, on the spiritually defeated. This has led to an unusual defensive strategy that blurs the line between military doctrine and religious warfare. When plague threats are detected in a system, the ecclesiarchy goes into overdrive. Priests flood the streets preaching with renewed fervor about the Emperor's protection. Commissars threaten anyone who speaks defeatist words with summary execution. Propaganda saturates every Vox channel, every data slate, every public display. Mass prayer sessions are held in public squares. Citizens are required to attend, to demonstrate their faith to prove they haven't lost hope. Those who refuse or show insufficient enthusiasm are marked as potential infection vectors and monitored closely. It's psychological warfare against a psychic plague. Keep the population believing. Keep them hoping. Make them terrified to admit doubt because doubt is the first symptom of infection. Does it work? Studies conducted by the Ordo Sepulchrum show that worlds with high Imperial Creed compliance rates have measurably lower infection rates during outbreaks. The correlation is undeniable. Faith somehow provides genuine protection against the curse. But there's a dark irony here. The Imperium has always demanded blind, unquestioning faith from its citizens. Now there's a medical reason for it. Doubt isn't just heresy anymore, it's a disease vector. Questioning isn't just forbidden, it's literally deadly. The propaganda writes itself. Your faith is your immune system. To question is to invite infection. To doubt is to doom yourself and those around you. It's manipulation on a massive scale, weaponizing religion and fear to maintain a spiritual quarantine. But in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, what choice is there? When the alternative is watching your entire planet transform into shambling dead, even the most draconian measures seem justified. Citizens are encouraged, or forced, to inform on neighbors who express despair. Prayer quotas are established and enforced. Faith inspections become as common as health screenings. The Imperium has always been dystopian. The curse has made it worse. Military protocols, Imperial Guard, and PDF forces operating in potential plague zones receive special training now. The lessons learned on Vrax, bought with millions of lives, have been codified into doctrine that every trooper must memorize. The key protocols are brutal in their simplicity. Body shots are wasted ammunition. Center mass means nothing to something that's already dead. Headshots only. Destroy the brain or sever the head completely. Snipers are retrained exclusively for headshots. Marksmen who can't consistently hit a moving head-sized target at range are reassigned. Promethium is more valuable than ammunition in plague zones. Flamer teams are prioritized for supply drops. Every squad should have access to fire, whether flamethrowers, incendiary grenades, or simple Molotov cocktails. When in doubt, burn it. There is no honorable burial in a plague zone. Your dead brother in arms gets the same treatment as the enemy you just killed. Dragged to a burn pit and incinerated while the body is still warm. It's psychologically devastating but absolutely necessary. Any delay risks reanimation. No exceptions. No mercy. The infected are already dead. You're just making it official before they can rise and spread it to others. Medics carry fast-acting toxins for mercy killings of infected troops. Commissars have standing orders to shoot any soldier who hesitates to execute infected comrades. Despair spreads infection faster than any physical contact. Commissars are authorized, encouraged, to shoot any trooper who appears to be losing hope. Not because they're cowards, but because they're potential plague vectors. Better to execute one despairing soldier than lose an entire regiment to the curse. It's brutal doctrine. Inhuman even. But it keeps regiments' combat effective in the face of an enemy that turns your own casualties into additional threats. If ground-based protocols are harsh, naval protocols are even worse. Space is unforgiving. A plague outbreak on a ship traveling through the warp could emerge months later in an entirely different system, spreading the curse to worlds that have no idea what's coming. So the Imperial Navy doesn't take chances. Any ship suspected of infection is immediately quarantined. It's ordered to halt all travel, shut down its warp drives, and await boarding teams. Any attempt to flee or break quarantine is met with immediate destruction. No warnings, no negotiations. Lance strikes reduce the vessel to molten debris scattered across the void. Boarding teams sent to sanitize infected vessels know they're likely not coming back. They wear sealed void suits reinforced against biological contamination. They carry flamers as primary weapons. And they have orders to vent entire sections of the ship into space if the infection has spread too far to burn out conventionally. The teams move through flickering corridors lit only by emergency lighting. Flamers ready, watching for movement in the shadows. Every body they find gets burned. Every sealed compartment gets breached carefully, then burned if anything inside moves. If a ship is too far gone, if the infection has spread to critical systems or the crew is entirely lost, the boarding teams don't even try. They retreat to their transport, seal the hatches, and watch as their command ship destroys the infected vessel from range. Better to lose one ship and its crew than let it dock somewhere and doom an entire station or planet. Many proud Imperial cruisers, merchant freighters, and even Navy battleships have been deliberately consigned to the void along with all hands, due to a single contaminated crew member showing telltale signs of infection. The statistics are classified, but estimates suggest hundreds of ships are destroyed each year for plague contamination, real or suspected. The Navy considers it an acceptable loss rate. When an outbreak grows too large to contain locally, when it jumps from containable to catastrophic, the Imperium doesn't hesitate. It sacrifices entire populations. Hydra Minoris wasn't an isolated incident. It's happened dozens of times across the galaxy. More frequently since the Great Rift opened. The pattern is always the same. A plague outbreak starts. Local authorities try to contain it. The infection spreads faster than expected. Within days or weeks, it becomes clear that the planet is lost. That's when the Imperium makes the cold calculation. Naval blockades enforce total quarantine. Nothing leaves the planet, nothing. Any ship attempting to flee is destroyed without warning. Escape pods are targeted and destroyed. Even servitor-piloted cargo haulers are blown out of space. Down on the surface, billions of people receive the broadcast that seals their fate. This world is under exterminatus quarantine protocols. No evacuation will be permitted. The Emperor protects, and then they're alone, left to their fate. Infection, starvation, violence, or death at the hands of the walking dead. Entire planetary populations abandoned to die so that neighboring worlds might live. It's monstrous. The greatest crime a government can commit against its people, magnified to planetary scale. It's also completely necessary. The alternative is worse. Far worse. One infected shuttle escaping to a new world. One contaminated cargo container making it through. One survivor who doesn't know they're infected yet, carrying the curse to a station with millions of souls aboard. That's all it takes to start the cycle again, to doom an entire sector. So the Imperium makes the brutal calculation. Billions on one world or trillions across a dozen worlds. Sacrifice the part to save the whole, and the blockades hold, always. No matter how many desperate pleas for rescue are broadcast, no matter how many ships try to run the gauntlet, no matter how many millions of innocent, uninfected citizens are condemning to death, the blockades hold. This is the price of survival in the 41st millennium. This is how humanity endures, by being willing to sacrifice everything to make choices that damn our souls, all in the name of a future that might never come. But some Inquisitors see opportunity where others see only horror. The Thorian faction of the Inquisition believes the Emperor will one day be reborn, resurrected to save humanity in its darkest hour. They study death and resurrection with intense, almost obsessive interest, and the Curse of Unbelief fascinates them. Think about it logically, they argue. The plague reanimates dead tissue using warp energy. The Golden Throne keeps the Emperor's corpse functioning using warp energy. Both processes sustain dead or dying flesh through immaterial power. Both defy natural law. The parallels are undeniable. Some Thorian Inquisitors have dedicated their entire careers to studying the plague, trying to understand its mechanisms at the deepest level. If they could isolate what allows it to preserve and animate dead flesh, perhaps they could apply that knowledge to the Emperor himself. Imagine it. A cure for the Emperor's condition. A way to truly resurrect him, not as a corpse on a throne, but as a living God walking among his people once more. It's a beautiful dream, a vision of hope in a hopeless age. It's also probably the worst kind of heresy imaginable. Experiments in damnation, every experiment has failed. Not just failed catastrophically in ways that prove just how foolish the entire endeavor is. One Magos biologist, working with Thorian inquisitorial backing, tried to create a sanctified version of the plague. He used holy relics, blessed unguents, sanctified water from Terra itself, prayers inscribed on every surface of his laboratory. The theory was sound. If you could infuse the plague with holy energy, counteract Nurgle's corruption with the Emperor's blessing, you might create something that could reanimate dead tissue without the corruption. The test subject, a willing volunteer, a faithful soldier who wanted to serve the Emperor even in death, was injected with the modified plague while holy rites were conducted. Within minutes, he began screaming. Tentacles erupted from his face, each tipped with a mouth that spoke in tongues, not High Gothic or Low Gothic, but something else. Something that hurt to hear. His body warped and twisted, growing in ways that violated geometry itself. The mutation was so extreme, so virulent, that it spread to everything it touched. Lab equipment. The walls. Even the holy relics themselves began to corrupt. They had to incinerate the entire facility from orbit. Another researcher attempted to use fragments of a saint's bones to purify plague samples. The logic was that a saint's remains, touched by the Emperor's light, might sanctify the disease. He ground the bones into powder, mixed them with infected tissue, and observed what happened. What happened was that he accidentally animated the saint's entire skeleton. The bones, which had lain peacefully in a reliquary for centuries, suddenly assembled themselves. The skeleton rose, wreathed in unholy fire that burned green and black. And then it attacked everyone in the lab. A saint's skeleton, reanimated by the plague's power, twisted into a mockery of what it had been in life. Instead of holy radiance, it emanated decay. Instead of inspiring faith, it spread despair. It took a squad of sisters of battle to finally destroy it, burning the bones to ash while singing hymns of cleansing. The sisters refused to speak of what they saw that day, but reports indicate several of them required months of spiritual counseling afterward. The faithful test subject, a third, experiment involved injecting a willing subject with diluted plague, while he meditated on faith and devotion. The theory: if strong faith protects against infection, perhaps overwhelming faith during infection could turn the curse into something else. Something useful. The subject was a monk who'd spent decades in prayer and meditation. His faith was unquestionable. He volunteered gladly, seeing it as his highest calling. They injected him with the modified plague. He began his meditations, focusing entirely on the Emperor's glory, on his unwavering faith, on his complete devotion. It didn't work. His body began the expected transformation, skin graying, strength fading. But then something unexpected happened. Mouths began opening across his body. Not wounds, mouths, with teeth and tongues and the ability to speak, and they all spoke in unison but not in his voice. They recited Nurglite prayers backward, in a language that predated humanity. The words caused physical pain to anyone who heard them. Reality itself seemed to warp around him as he spoke. His original mouth screamed for them to kill him, begged for death while the other mouths continued their awful prayers. They burned him, but the damage was done. Everyone who'd heard those prayers suffered nightmares for months. Some never recovered. One researcher took his own life, unable to endure what he'd heard. The inevitable conclusion, each failure, each disaster, each abomination created proves the same fundamental truth. You cannot sanctify corruption. You cannot take Nurgle's gift and turn it holy. You cannot use the tools of chaos to serve the Emperor. The curse is antithetical to life and hope by its very nature. It's a weapon of despair, crafted by malevolent intelligence to destroy humanity. Any attempt to repurpose it, to find some good in it, is doomed from the start. But the Thorians continue their research, quietly, desperately, because if there's even a chance, even the smallest possibility that understanding the plague could help save the Emperor, how could they not try? Even if it damns their souls, even if it creates horrors beyond imagining, even if every experiment ends in tragedy, the Emperor is dying, has been dying for 10,000 years. If there's any chance, any possibility of saving him, isn't that worth any price? The Inquisition is divided on this question. Many believe the Thorian experiments should be shut down entirely, the researchers executed for heresy. Others argue that desperate times require desperate measures, that no option should be off the table when humanity's very survival is at stake. The debate continues. The experiments continue. And the horrors continue. Let me share something the Administratum has classified at the highest levels. Something that even most Inquisitors don't know the full truth about. The Curse of Unbelief is getting worse. Not just spreading, evolving, adapting, learning. Since the Great Rift opened, infection rates have skyrocketed exponentially. New strains appear constantly, each more virulent than the last. The plague is not static. It's changing, growing more dangerous with each passing year. Some recent outbreaks have shown characteristics never seen before. On the world of Gulistan, victims contracted the curse without any physical contact whatsoever. They simply breathed the same air as plague zombies. No bites, no scratches. No contact with infected fluids. Just shared air. The entire planet fell in 2 weeks. 20 billion souls infected by breathing. When Ordo Sepulchrum teams finally arrived to investigate, they found empty cities. No survivors. No zombies either. The infected had apparently wandered off into the wastes driven by some unknown instinct. To this day, nobody knows where they went. There are verified reports of Vox broadcasts that carry the infection. You listen to certain frequencies, sometimes by accident, sometimes because you don't know what you're tuning into. And within hours, you start showing symptoms. No physical contact needed. Just exposure to the signal. One station commander on a frontier outpost described it. We picked up a distress signal from a nearby system. Standard protocol. We recorded it for analysis. The tech priest who first listened to it was dead within a day. Risen within 2. We incinerated the recording, but not before 3 other crew members had been exposed. We had to space them. The signal itself has been analyzed by the Inquisition's best minds. There's something in it. Not words, not even sounds exactly, but a pattern that induces immediate, overwhelming despair in anyone who hears it. And despair opens the door to infection. Certain frequencies are now banned throughout the Imperium. Vox operators are trained to recognize and immediately shut down suspicious signals, but new ones appear constantly. On several worlds, people have turned without any obvious source of infection. No plague zombies nearby. No chaos cults. No Nurglite presence at all. The common factor? Moments of absolute despair. A mother learning all her children died in a factory collapse. A soldier watching his entire unit get slaughtered, knowing he could have prevented it. A priest losing his faith after witnessing an atrocity. Pure emotional trauma, grief and despair so profound that it physically manifests as infection. No external vector needed. The curse simply appears, as if the warp itself reaches through at that moment of complete hopelessness and plants the seed. If these reports are accurate and the Inquisition has verified dozens of such cases, it means the curse is no longer purely biological. It's transitioning into something else, something that exists partially in the warp, spreading through emotion and thought as much as through bite and scratch. This is what keeps the High Lords of Terra awake at night. What causes even hardened Inquisitors to show fear? Because you can quarantine a planet, you can burn infected corpses, you can shoot plague zombies in the head, you can maintain naval blockades and enforce faith through terror. But how do you quarantine thoughts? How do you burn emotions? How do you shoot despair itself? If the curse can be transmitted through sound, through psychic resonance, through pure emotion, then traditional containment methods become useless. The infection could be anywhere, could strike anyone, could spread through a planet's population before anyone even realizes there's an outbreak. And there's no defense against it, except faith, except hope, except refusing to give in to despair. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, those are the scarcest resources in the galaxy. There's one scenario that no one in power will discuss publicly, a nightmare too terrible to acknowledge, even in classified briefings that only the High Lords see. What if the curse reaches Terra itself, the throne world, home to quadrillions of souls packed into hive cities that make Necromunda look spacious, the heart of the Imperium, the seat of the Emperor's power, and also the most densely populated place in the entire galaxy. Perfect conditions for a plague that spreads through crowds and feeds on despair. If the Curse of Unbelief ever took hold on Terra, there would be no quarantine option. You can't just seal off humanity's capital and let everyone die. You can't blockade Holy Terra and watch as the cradle of humanity transforms into a charnel house. The Imperium would collapse. The Administratum, the Mechanicus, the Ecclesiarchy, all gone. The entire governmental structure of humanity, reduced to shambling corpses. The political and practical implications would be catastrophic enough, but there's something worse to consider. The Emperor sits on the golden throne sustained by warp energy, technically dead but preserved through miracle technology. His physical body is a corpse, animated and preserved through the same fundamental principles that drive the Curse of Unbelief. What happens if the plague reaches the Imperial Palace? If it spreads through the custodians, the servants, the tech priests who maintain the throne? What happens if it reaches him? Would the Emperor's body rise? Would the corpse god of mankind become an actual corpse, shambling and hungry? Would his psychic might corrupt the curse, or would the curse corrupt him? No one knows. No one wants to find out. But in the darkest corners of the Inquisition, contingency plans exist. Protocols for what to do if Terra itself becomes infected. They're sealed behind adamantium vault doors and psychic wards accessible only to the highest lords of Terra. Very few have seen these plans, those who have described them with hollow eyes and shaking hands. Because the contingency plan for Terra falling to the plague is simple, brutal, and unthinkable. Exterminatus. Destroy the throne world itself. Virus bombs. Cyclonic torpedoes. Lance strikes until the planet is molten slag. Better to lose Terra, to lose the Emperor himself, than to let the heart of humanity become a plague world that could spread the infection to every corner of the galaxy. It's the ultimate expression of the Imperium's grim philosophy. Sacrifice anything. Destroy everything, commit any atrocity necessary for survival, even if it means killing the god you worship. That's how dangerous the Curse of Unbelief has become. That even Terra, even the Emperor himself, might have to be sacrificed to stop it. Of course, the Imperium isn't waiting passively for this nightmare scenario. The defensive measures protecting Terra from plague infection are extreme, multi-layered, and constantly active. Any ship approaching Terra is scanned for biological and warp contamination. Multiple times, by multiple independent teams, ships that show even the slightest anomaly are quarantined in the outer system, boarded by hazmat teams and thoroughly sanitized. Crews are interrogated. Cargo is inspected down to the molecular level. Entire fleets patrol the Sol system, specifically watching for Nurgle's influence. Psychers constantly scan for the psychic signature of despair that accompanies the curse. The Custodian Guard, the Emperor's personal warriors, maintain eternal vigilance, plague outbreaks on Terra, and yes, They do happen, despite all precautions, are responded to with immediate, overwhelming force. Entire hab blocks are sealed and incinerated at the first sign of infection. The Arbites shoot suspected carriers on sight. No trials, no appeals, just execution and cremation. It's draconian. It's necessary, and it's barely enough. Because everyone knows the truth. If Typhus or another of Nurgle's champions really wanted to hit Terra, really put their full effort into it, really made it their singular goal, they might succeed. And that possibility, that horrible what-if haunts every defensive strategy meeting, every tactical briefing, every long night when the High Lords look at star charts and wonder when, not if, the plague will come for Holy Terra itself. This information might save your life. Pay very close attention. Early warning signs, if you see these symptoms in someone, a family member, a coworker, a stranger on the street, they're probably infected. Gray-green pallor to the skin, more pronounced than normal hive pollution, small greenish or black scabs appearing randomly on the body, nausea and dizziness lasting more than 24 hours, unusual lethargy or confusion, personality changes, reports of seeing spots or shadows at the edge of vision strange, uncharacteristic expressions of hopelessness or despair. What you should do: immediately report it to local authorities right away. Enforcers, PDF, Arbites, anyone with authority and weapons. Do not try to help the infected person. Do not touch them. Do not share food, water, or airspace if you can help it. Their sweat, saliva, blood, breath, all of it might carry the infection. If authorities don't respond quickly, or if they don't believe you, or if they're already overwhelmed, run. Get as far from the infected person as possible. If you're in a hive city, head to upper levels if you can. The curse spreads fastest in crowded lower areas where despair is already endemic. Distance and altitude are your friends. You'll know when an outbreak becomes serious. Trust me, you'll know. The Vox will go silent or start broadcasting warnings. Enforcers will appear in force. You'll hear screaming. You'll see people running. When the dead start walking, everyone knows. Your priorities in order. Plague zombies can't climb well. Upper levels of hives, tall buildings, anything that requires ladder climbing or complex navigation. They'll try to follow, but they're clumsy, uncoordinated. Height buys you time. Las guns if you're lucky and can raid an enforcer station or PDF armory. Flamers if you're blessed by the Emperor. Anything sharp or heavy otherwise, knives, wrenches, broken pipes. Remember, you need to destroy the head. A blade is better than a club. Somewhere defensible with only 1 or 2 entrances you can barricade. Multiple exits if possible. Never trap yourself. High windows, sturdy doors, clear sight lines. You want to see them coming and have time to react. Food, water, medical gear, rope, tools, promethium if you can find it. But don't spend too long looting. Speed matters more than supplies in the early hours of an outbreak. Groups survive longer than individuals. But be careful. Verify that anyone you team up with isn't infected. Check for gray skin, confusion, strange wounds, and watch their mental state. Anyone losing hope is a liability. Remember the fundamental truth: they're already dead. You're not killing them, you're stopping them. This cannot be emphasized enough. Body shots are wasted ammunition. You can pump a dozen last bolts into a zombie's torso and it'll keep coming. But destroy the brain or sever the head completely and it drops. If you're not a trained marksman, get close. Closer than feels safe. Aim carefully. 1 shot to the head beats 10 shots to the body. Flamers are ideal. A burst of promethium will solve most zombie problems permanently. But even regular fire is effective. Molotov cocktails, oil and ignition sources. Trap them in burning rooms. Zombies burn surprisingly well, being mostly dried out tissue and corruption. Every scratch is a potential infection vector. Every bite is a death sentence. Every splash of their blood on your exposed skin is a risk. Keep distance. Use long weapons, spears, poles with blades attached. Let them impale themselves on your weapon rather than grappling with them. Severing tendons, destroying knees, cutting through necks. These stop a zombie's mobility even if they don't kill it. A zombie that can't walk is much less dangerous. A zombie with no limbs will still try to bite you. A zombie with no legs will drag itself toward you. A zombie that's been killed will get back up if you didn't finish the job properly. When in doubt, destroy the head, then burn the corpse. I'm not going to lie to you. If you're bitten, scratched, or exposed to infected fluids, you're done. You have maybe a week before the infection kills you. Maybe less if it's one of the new strains, and then you'll rise again as one of them, hungry for the flesh of anyone who was unlucky enough to care about you. Your options are limited but important. If you have someone who cares about you, someone strong enough to do what needs to be done, this is the kindest option. A las bolt to the head, a blade to the brainstem. Make it quick, make it painless. Die human while you still can. Isolation until death. If you're alone or can't bear to ask someone to kill you, isolate yourself. Lock yourself in a room, tell others you're infected, and wait for the end. Leave clear instructions that your body must be burned immediately after death. Don't let yourself become another monster. Make your last days count. If you're a fighter, if you have the will, spend your remaining time taking as many of Nurgle's servants with you as possible. When you're close to turning, when you can feel the final stage approaching, walk into a nest of zombies with every explosive you can carry. Die fighting, die human, but whatever you do, whatever choice you make, do not try to hide the infection. Do not convince yourself you'll be the exception. Do not stay around loved ones hoping for a miracle that won't come. The curse has no cure, no treatment, no exceptions ever recorded in 10,000 years of history. Die human. Don't rise as a monster. That's the last gift you can give to those who survive you. This sounds trite, naive, foolish even. How can you maintain hope when the dead are literally eating your neighbors? When your world is ending? When the Emperor himself seems to have abandoned you? But you have to try. You must try. Because the moment you give up, the moment you truly believe there's no tomorrow, that everything is lost, that hope itself is dead. That's when you become vulnerable. That's when the curse can take root even without physical infection. We've documented cases where pure despair triggered spontaneous infection, where people simply gave up hope and started showing symptoms within hours, despite no contact with plague vectors. Faith in the Emperor, hope for dawn, belief that you'll survive this nightmare. It's not just spiritual comfort, it's your immune system against a plague of despair. Tell yourself tomorrow will come. I will survive. The Emperor protects. Say it even if you don't believe it. Especially if you don't believe it. Force the words. Fake the faith if you must, because the alternative is so much worse. The alternative is becoming the thing you fear most. As I record this, as my fingers move across the data slate keys, I can hear them getting closer. The scratching in the ventilation shafts has become pounding on the doors. The moans have become a constant background roar, like an ocean of hunger breaking against the walls of this hab block. The galaxy is burning. The Great Rift splits the Imperium in two, bleeding unreality into our universe. Chaos armies pour from the warp like pus from a wound. Xenos press on all borders, sensing weakness. And everywhere in the shadows and forgotten places, in the hive depths and void ships, in the hearts of those who've lost all hope, the curse of unbelief spreads. World after world falls silent. Not invaded, not conquered, just silent, empty vox channels, dark cities. And if you could see the surface from orbit, you'd spot them. Millions of shambling figures wandering aimlessly, waiting for living prey that's already fled or died. The Imperium fights on because it has no choice. Every day, millions die holding the line. Every day, thousands more rise as undead mockeries of what they once were. Every day, the darkness presses closer. There is no end in sight. No hope of final victory. Just survival, purchased at an increasingly terrible cost. Yet here's what I need you to understand. What I need you to carry with you if you survive this. Humanity endures, despite everything. Despite the horrors that would break any sane civilization. Despite the despair that literally kills us. Despite facing enemies that we helped create through our own weakness, we endure. On 1,000 worlds, defenders stand firm. Sisters of battle cleanse hive cities with holy fire. Their power armor scorched with the ash of burned plague dead. Space Marines conduct surgical purges in infected zones, their bolters never silent, their blades never clean. Imperial Guard regiments hold quarantine lines until reinforcements arrive or death takes them, and sometimes they hold even after death, their faith so strong that even the curse cannot fully claim them. And ordinary people, citizens like you and me, they make the choice every single day to keep hoping, keep believing, keep fighting. Mothers protect their children. Workers defend their manufactorums. Hive gangers put aside their feuds to fight a common enemy. People who have every reason to give up, every justification for despair, choose instead to believe in tomorrow. because that's what defeats the curse in the end. Not weapons, though we need those. Not quarantine, though we must enforce it. Not even the Emperor's light, powerful as it is. Hope defeats it. Faith defeats it. Refusal to surrender defeats it. Every person who refuses to give up is a soldier in this war. Every community that maintains faith despite tragedy is a fortress. Every world that resists despair even as the dead walk its streets is a victory. The curse of unbelief is powerful, ancient, terrifying. It has claimed billions, will claim billions more. It evolves and adapts and spreads through vectors we're only beginning to understand, but it's not inevitable. It's not unstoppable. It's not the end. As long as one human heart still beats with hope, the plague cannot claim us all. As long as we refuse to surrender to despair, we deny Nurgle his ultimate victory. The Emperor gave us many gifts, the Imperium, the Astartes, the technology to span the stars. But perhaps his greatest gift was this: the capacity to hope even in the face of certain doom. The ability to believe in tomorrow even when today is hell. That's not a weakness. That's not naivety or delusion. That's our weapon. The only weapon that truly matters against this particular enemy. When you hear the moans in the dark. When you see the shambling forms approaching. When your world seems to be ending and all hope appears lost. When friends fall and rise again as enemies. When you're alone, cornered, out of ammunition and options. Remember, hope isn't just an emotion. It's armor. It's a weapon. It's the difference between dying human and rising as a monster. Remember, faith protects. Not always from death. Death comes for us all eventually. But faith protects your soul, keeps you human, denies the curse its grip. Remember, every moment you refuse to give up is a victory. Every second you maintain hope is an act of defiance against the Plague Lord himself. So when the darkness closes in, when despair whispers that it's over, that you're already dead, that hope is a lie, spit in despair's face, laugh at the darkness. Choose hope anyway, even if, especially if, hope seems foolish. Because the alternative is unacceptable. The alternative is surrender. And humanity doesn't surrender, we endure. We survive. We fight for the Emperor, for humanity, for the tomorrow we refuse to let them take from us.